You know that feeling. You've got something you desperately want to say in English. The idea is right there.
Oh, yeah.
But the words just, I don't know, scatter. Or maybe you have the words, but then you're hit with that fear.
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting the grammar right? Will they understand me? Pronunciation.
Yeah, that feeling of being stuck or
Yeah.
kind of inhibited, maybe just plain nervous. It's incredibly common when you're learning a language, especially English, I think.
It really is. It feels like this wall that learners hit, after maybe getting the hang of reading or listening.
Exactly. Because speaking, that active skill,
Mm.
producing the language confidently,
Yeah.
it brings up its own unique set of challenges.
Like what, specifically?
Things like grappling with maybe not enough vocabulary
Unlimited words.
or wrestling with pronunciation. English spelling versus sound
Mm-hmm.
is tricky.
Definitely.
And then tripping over grammar, sentence structure.
And for so many people, it's that very fear. Like you said, the fear of making mistakes. That becomes the biggest barrier, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like you freeze up.
Yeah, before you even really start. Inhibition is powerful.
It really is.
And understanding why these hurdles are so difficult for students.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
We're doing a deep dive, looking into the factors that contribute to difficulties in speaking English.
And we've got a specific piece of research to help us, a study done with 11th graders over in Tembelahan, Indonesia.
Yeah, it really zeroes in on this question. What specific things make English speaking hard for these particular students?
So our mission for this deep dive, which is custom tailored for you, the learner, is basically to unpack this study.
Right. We want to pull out the key insights from their findings, the interviews they did.
To really understand what influences these speaking difficulties the most, we'll look at it from the student's view and the teacher's view in the study.
Okay, let's get into it then.
Let's do it.
Okay, so unpacking the study. It starts off by defining speaking, pretty practically actually,
Oh, so
as using English to convey information, ideas, feelings orally, basic communication. But more than just chatting, right?
yeah, it emphasizes speaking is crucial for interacting globally. It serves real purposes like, well, informing people, entertaining, even persuading.
Okay, so it's a tool. And does the study mention those common problems we talked about earlier?
It does. It touches on them, the vocabulary gaps, those pronunciation puzzles.
Like off having, 3 different sounds?
Exactly. And the struggle with sentence structure, getting tenses right, and yeah, that fear of messing up, that crops up again.
Okay. So the researchers knew these were common issues.
Right. But they wanted to dig deeper.
Yeah.
To understand the underlying factors that were really contributing to these difficulties for this group.
So how did they figure that out? What was the method?
They used what's called a descriptive qualitative approach. So they surveyed 40 students, 11th graders.
Okay, 40 students?
Yeah, it was about a quarter of the students in that grade. They used a questionnaire covering potential factors. And importantly, they set a kind of threshold.
A threshold.
Yeah, if 50% or more of the students agreed that something was a difficulty factor, they counted it as significant.
Got it. So more than half had to point to it.
Precisely. And then to add more depth, more why behind the numbers.
They did interviews.
Exactly. Interviews with one English teacher and some of the students. That qualitative data really helps explain things.
Okay, that makes sense. Quantitative from the survey, qualitative from the interviews. So what did they find? What were the main factors causing trouble?
The study basically looked at 4 main categories, 4 potential factors.
Okay, what's the first one?
First up was factors related to the learners themselves.
So,
Internal stuff.
like their own skill.
Yeah, exactly. Their current vocabulary level, grammar knowledge, pronunciation skill,
Yeah.
and also things like self-confidence or fear.
Right. And what did the survey show for that category? How many students felt that was a factor?
The data showed 62.5% of students pointed to this category.
Okay, 62.5%. So definitely a factor, over the 50% mark.
Yes, but maybe not the biggest one, based on that number alone.
And what did the interviews add? Did the teacher or students shed more light on this?
They did. The teacher really focused on the linguistic parts. Vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. They said mastery of these is just fundamental.
Makes sense. If you don't have the basics.
Speaking is going to be hard.
Yeah.
And the teacher also connected low confidence directly to that fear of making mistakes in those areas.
Ah, okay. So confidence and fear are tied to the actual language skills.
Seems so. And the students. They basically confirmed it. They
Right.
talked about, frustration with English pronunciation not matching the spelling.
Yeah, that's a common one.
And they admitted feeling nervous or shy One student even described English grammar like math, needing formulas,
Wow, like math. That sounds intimidating.
doesn't it? So the takeaway here is, yeah, individual skills and confidence matter. Over 60% confirmed it. But that fear of getting those skills wrong seems really, really intertwined.
Okay, so that covers the internal side, the learner themselves. What about external things? What was the second factor?
The second factor they investigated was the curriculum.
The curriculum. So like the textbooks, the materials, the syllabus.
Exactly. The English learning material provided by the school,
Right.
and also the amount of time allocated for English lessons in the schedule.
Okay. And the percentage for the curriculum factor, how did that score?
This one jumped a lot, 90%.
90. 9-0. Wow. So 9 out of 10 students felt the curriculum contributed to their speaking difficulty?
Yeah, it's a huge number. It really stands out.
Does the study explain why? What was it about the curriculum?
Well, this is where the interview data adds some really important nuance.
Okay.
While the number is super high, the teacher actually offered a slightly different take. They mentioned that, yeah, the amount of time for English was maybe a bit limited,
Uh-huh.
but they emphasized that the effectiveness and efficiency of how that time was used, that was much more important than just the number of minutes on the timetable.
Ah, okay. So it's not just we don't have enough time, but maybe the time they do have isn't being used in the best way to actually build speaking skills.
That seems to be the insight. And interestingly, some students kind of echoed this. They suggested that even the limited time could be enough if it was used properly.
So the 90% reflects the student's experience of the curriculum feeling inadequate for speaking.
Right.
But the interview suggests the real issue might be how that curriculum time is being implemented. The quality, the method within the time.
Precisely. It points to the implementation being key.
That's a really fascinating contrast. High number, but a deeper issue maybe. Okay, what was factor number 3?
Factor 3 was the environment.
Environment, meaning.
Basically, the students' surroundings. So the school atmosphere outside the English class, their friends, what happens at home, that kind of thing.
Right, the context they're in. And how did environment score in the survey?
This one came in just over that 50% threshold at 57.5%.
Okay, 57.5%. So still a factor, but numerically less prominent than curriculum learners themselves.
Correct.
What did the teacher and students say about the environment's role in the interviews?
The teacher had a great description. They called the environment the arena for practicing speaking.
An arena, I like that.
Yeah. And they said, if the environment encourages using English, even just casually,
It helps.
it helps. But if everyone just defaults to their mother tongue outside of class, well, it hinders progress. You don't get the practice.
Makes total sense. You need chances and maybe a safe space to actually use the language you're learning.
Exactly. And students agreed. They mentioned needing to practice English daily, or they wish they were, living in an English-speaking country. That immersive idea.
Right, the immersion dream.
So the insight here is pretty straightforward. Opportunities for real-world practice, which the environment provides or doesn't provide, they do play a role, confirmed by over half the students. But maybe less impactful, according to this data, than, say, the curriculum issues.
Okay, got it. So we have learners themselves, curriculum, environment. What was the last one? The fourth factor.
The fourth category was teaching strategies.
Ah, so the actual methods teachers are using in the classroom.
Exactly. The approaches, the techniques they use specifically to teach English speaking.
And the percentage for teaching strategies, let me guess, higher.
Highest by a significant margin, 95%.
95%.
Correct.
Wow, that is overwhelming agreement. Nearly every student surveyed felt the teaching methods were a factor in their speaking difficulties.
It really is striking. And what's more, the teacher's perspective in the interview, it lined up powerfully with this number.
What did the teacher say?
The teacher stated, pretty unequivocally actually, that the learning method has a huge impact. They said it was, in their view, the main factor for developing speaking ability.
The main factor. Strong words.
Very. And they stressed that methods need to be tailored, adapted to the student's specific needs and conditions, not just one size fits all.
Wow. Okay, so the insight here feels pretty stark then.
It does.
While the students' own skills and the curriculum structure and the environment outside class, they all play a part. It seems like how the language is actually being taught and practiced in the classroom, the teaching strategies that was seen as the single biggest contributor to the difficulty by almost everyone.
That's the dominant finding from this research, definitely. Based on those questionnaire results, 95% for teaching strategies, then 90% for curriculum, 62.5% for learners themselves, and 57.5% for environment.
Right.
The study concludes that, yeah, teaching strategies were the dominant factor causing these students speaking difficulties, at least in this specific context they studied.
It really puts the spotlight on the process of learning, doesn't it?
It does.
Suggesting the methods used might have an even greater perceived impact on difficulty than the resources or the external support, or maybe even the student's own starting point to some degree.
Yeah, it points pretty squarely at pedagogical approaches, the how of teaching.
So, okay, let's zoom out a bit. What does this deep dive really mean for you, the learner, listening right now? Or maybe for anyone involved in language education?
Well, I think it offers a really valuable perspective. If you're out there struggling with speaking English,
Mm-hmm.
this study suggests it's probably not just about your individual effort or, some innate aptitude.
Right. It's not all on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Factors like how you're being taught, the methods used, and the kinds of opportunities your learning environment gives you, they seem to be really significant contributors to the difficulty level.
Understanding that could be empowering.
I think so. Maybe it encourages you to seek out learning methods that are more focused on active speaking practice.
Mm.
Or maybe it just helps you realize that your struggle is common and it's influenced by these external forces, not just, some personal failing.
Yeah, it helps shift the focus maybe from I'm just bad at this to something like, maybe the way I'm learning isn't the most effective approach for speaking.
Precisely. It kind of externalizes the challenge, which can be really helpful psychologically.
Okay. So, given that teaching strategies came out as the dominant factor in this specific study, here's a final thought to leave you with. If changing the methods of instruction and practice, the how, is potentially the most powerful lever we have for improving students' speaking ability, how much could truly innovative or maybe more communicative focused teaching actually transform the learning experience? Could it potentially make fluency and confidence more achievable than just, say, doubling down on vocabulary drills or grammar exercises using the same old methods?
That's the big question, isn't it? It really poses a significant challenge, but also a huge opportunity, I think, for language educators and learners everywhere.